A dramatic day in South Korean politics has seen one presidential hopeful ordered back to trial over allegations of election law violation, Another hopeful signaling he will run in the poll next month. And a past president facing yet another indictment, this time for abuse of power. Shin takes us through the latest ups and downs in the country's political landscape.
The Supreme Court finding the top contender of the race, Lee Jae-myung, guilty in an election law violation case. Legal experts have been struck by how quickly the court moved. Under the judiciary's so-called 633 rule, which suggests 6 months for a first trial and 3 months each for appeals. Cases like these usually take much longer, but Lee's case moved at breakneck speed. Within 4 days of taking up the appeal, the Supreme Court held 2 full bench hearings and scheduled its ruling for today. Analysts say the accelerated timeline was intentional. By handing down a decision ahead of the May 11th candidate registration deadline, the court likely aimed to avoid accusations of political interference. And that's because political parties cannot replace their candidates even if they're disqualified. So once the official campaign period starts on May 12th, any ruling risks being seen as swaying voters. On the surface, experts say today's ruling won't affect the course of the presidential election. They believe there's just not enough time for a final ruling to be made before the election in June. While Lee and the Democratic Party remain committed to his candidacy, the ruling People Power Party is demanding that Lee steps down, accusing him of repeatedly misleading the public. And if Lee were to be found guilty before the presidential election, he could lose his National Assembly seat and be barred from politics for up to 5 years. But if he were to win the presidential election, then be found guilty, he would be protected by presidential immunity that stipulates a sitting president cannot be charged with a criminal offense except for insurrection or treason. The Supreme Court would have no choice but to suspend proceedings for 5 years. Lee has been holding a steady top position in opinion polls.
정치적 경쟁자들 입장에서는 온갖 상상과 또 기대를 하겠지만 정치는 결국 국민이 하는 것입니다. 국민의 뜻을 따라야 되겠죠.
Distantly trailing Lee in rankings is none other than Acting President Han Duck-soo, who has announced he will step down to take on a greater responsibility, a move widely interpreted as a prelude to a presidential run. Han brings decades of experience, having served in senior roles like trade minister, finance minister, ambassador to the U.S., and twice as prime minister, once under Liberal President Roh Moo-hyun and later under Yoon Suk-yeol. Political watchers believe Han may align with the PPP at the last minute to present a unified conservative challenge against Lee. Finally, also at the center of this political storm is none other than former President Yoon Suk-yeol, who's still facing mounting legal troubles. Prosecutors have indicted Yoon without detention for abuse of power. This is on top of his insurrection case, all adding to a deepening legal crisis surrounding a former president that's fueling South Korea's political turbulence.